And now we get a chance to welcome back Dr. Sergio Alvarado from the Desert Institute of Sports Medicine for another go-round with us right back here on Ask a Doctor. If you've got questions, send them to us on Twitter at 600 ESPN El Paso, or you can always throw them to us on our mobile app powered by United Bank. The easiest ways to get right on in and through to the program. Doc, good to see you back. How are you today?
Great to talk to you guys again.
Great to have you with us. I'll tell you. One of the storylines today, Doc, is hearing on the ruling for Tyler Skaggs, the pitcher for the Angels who tragically passed away a few years ago, and his former communications director, who they found guilty today in a federal court of providing fentanyl and opioids to him and other players, now sentenced to 20 years, a minimum of 20 years in jail because he was found guilty by a jury today. And I want to talk about, as we start things off, professional athletes and athletes for any level, whatever it is, and really sometimes the dangers of opioids, especially when you mix them with alcohol and other substances, and here is the worst possible outcome: a professional athlete who was 27 years old and really in the prime of his career tragically passes away. But it just goes to show you that it's definitely still out there, and you got to be really careful, Doc.
That's right, and I think you hit some key points there that a lot of these athletes think that it's something that it's going to go without consequences, and this is the greatest consequence they can have is ultimately death. And really, they're getting it from non-professionals. They're masking problems, and of course at the elite level, the pros, they're trying to go day in and day out, but masking it with the opiates, it's dangerous. And like you said, there's a lot of things, a lot of these players, like they dangerously mix it with alcohol, and that's a recipe for disaster.
Fentanyl, how dangerous is that in particular, since clearly that was at the root of the discussion for the Skaggs case?
So when it comes to narcotics, you have different drug classes. As the number gets smaller, the worse it is. A schedule 3 is a lot less dangerous than a schedule 2, and fentanyl is a schedule 2 now, and it's pretty dangerous. I mean, you in Texas, you can't get it without a triplicate, which means that the doctor's writing it with a special prescription. And so this guy, I mean, like, not only like was he practicing medicine without a degree, he probably got it some illegal way, that was dangerous,
Yeah, exactly. Well, from the case and what we heard, he was the director of communications was getting it through someone else, and then essentially getting it for the players, and ultimately, they had, I guess, a dealer on the side they were working with. And as this story has come out, you've started to find out the inner workings of what was going on with the Angels a few years ago. Now, we don't know if other teams are like this, or if this is kind of just a very isolated case, but clearly it's scary to think about. Professional athletes, look, I'm sure some of them are in a great deal of pain from the rigors of a schedule. They're looking for ways to ultimately heal their bodies or cope with it. But you got to be really careful about what you take and what you mix.
Right. And the thing is, there's a lot of different things. And I mean, they also have, like you said, they're going at a higher pace, and they're putting their body through a lot more. But they also have a lot more resources. Like they have physical therapists. They have a whole team that's designed to help them get through the pain and really get to the root of what's going on. And I think sometimes, unfortunately, like they're looking for shortcuts, and at that level, it's kind of tough. And I mean, this doesn't go without consequences, unfortunately.
Dr. Sergio Alvarado joining us right now, board certified here in El Paso in medicine with an added qualification in sports medicine. In fact, the Desert Institute of Sports Medicine is getting ready to reopen their doors. They've expanded their location on the east side at 2267 Traywood Suite G2. You want to set up an appointment, you can call them at 915-256-9751. That's 915-256-9751. Doc, I want to shift it over and talk to concussions right now, because that's another storyline that clearly is pretty prevalent in all professional sports and college sports and high school and youth sports. Have we, as a society, made some progress the last couple of years in detecting concussions in athletes of all different sizes and ages, and also preventing concussions in sports?
Yes and no. The quick answer, but we've done a lot in preventing them. It's one of the few things that a lot of the parents and a lot of the coaches are still surprised. You have a kid that breaks his arm, and mom and dad are saying, like, go ahead and play. Technically, he can't play. Like, it wouldn't be advisable, but legally, I can't pull him off the field and say, hey, you can't play. Now, you have a kid that has a concussion. The moment I say concussion, he's got to step off the field, and I have full legal authority to do that. So there's a lot more teeth. If you look a little bit at the history of how the concussion laws came into effect, it was Washington State that had the Ronnie Lindstedt, this middle school player that unfortunately suffered what's called second impact syndrome, and he was hit during a game. Didn't tell anyone, he shakes it off, gets hit again, has to be airlifted. 18 months later, 6 months later, he wakes up from a coma. 18 months later, he's learning how to talk and walk. And mom and dad said enough. 2 years later, 2 years of fighting, they petition, and Washington becomes the first state to have concussion laws. And eventually, all the states followed suit, and Texas being one of them too. Texas has Natasha's law, which and this came about after a high schooler, a soccer player, suffered a concussion, and she went from being a straight A student to barely being able to remember what the lesson was, 20 minutes ago, and of course that hurt her collegiate aspirations, and so because of that, there's a lot more teeth in concussions. Scientifically, though, we still have grounds. We still have ways to go with as far as preventing them. And I tell, when I talk to my athletes about concussions, I tell them about the peanut in a shell, and the brain is pretty much like a peanut in a shell, and you can saran wrap the heck out of that peanut, but if you shake it, that peanut inside is going to shake, and that's what happens with the brain. So the thing is, you can have a helmet that's padded all the way through, but it's not going to prevent the concussion because it's not going to prevent the brain from moving back and forth. And so while helmets are great, so we don't have any fractures or any other trauma to the skull, we still got a ways to go with concussion, preventing them.
Doc, how challenging is it to recognize the symptoms of concussions that a player might endure?
Sometimes, it can be challenging because like just today, I had a soccer player. She got kicked with a ball in the face, and of course, you're going to get teary eyed, and you're going to get a headache, and you might even be dizzy. And at the moment, you're like, hey, is this a concussion or not? And with concussions, I always I tell the athletic trainers, like, it's always better to err on the side of caution. And we're lucky to have a lot of great trainers in El Paso, and so they know that it's got to be serial checkup. So it's not you check them right after the injury, and then you should check them again like half an hour, maybe even like 10 minutes after, to see how they're doing and they're progressing, and if symptoms are getting worse.
What about the young ones, Doc? When you talk about the younger athletes, especially those that are, let's say, ages 6 to 10 or 6 to 11, if, let's say, something happens, whether it's a collision, they get hit in the head playing a sport, what's the easiest way to determine whether they could be suffering a concussion and maybe not even know it?
Well, I mean, the most common symptom is going to be a headache, and for that reason, you brought up a good point, Steve, as far as the young ones, from the studies, we've seen that the younger you are, the more time there is for you to not recover, and down it becomes an additive effect. And so, in fact, so much so that the American of Pediatrics has come out with a strong consensus statement saying under 10, no contact sports. And that's up north, that's no hockey under 10. And down south, it's no full contact tackle football. Flag football is okay, but of course, like those are the sports that can come out, that just because in sheer numbers you're going to have more concussions, but you don't have to necessarily be in those sports to have a concussion.
And clearly, Doc, once you get one concussion, you're going to be more susceptible to getting future concussions, and the hits might not even be as severe the second, third, and fourth time. But because of prior injuries, you're more prone. And sadly, the more concussions you get, the worse the symptoms get over time.
Right. And so the thing is, the worst being second impact syndrome, and that's what happened to Ronnie Lindstedt. That there's a herniation of the brainstem, and you can die. I mean, that's and so luckily, like I think on the coach's side and the trainer side and parent side and athletes, that it's gotten better, and I guess I've been lucky to have practiced and been practicing for 10 years, so I got to see the changes that were before. It was a nightmare, just trying to get the athlete, and now like pretty much I'm seeing an average about 20 kids every 2 weeks with concussion symptoms, and I'm glad they're doing well. I also see that when the athlete or mom or dad look the other way, and unfortunately what could be a couple days recovery turns into a couple weeks recovery.
Why is that, Doc? Because that should be really important. Is why should you not rush your return to play action?
Right, because the thing is, it's very subjective. Every player, depending on where they got hit, is going to have different symptoms. And so what happens is we call it cognitive rest. You can't shut off the brain, 100% like you could an ankle. You could say, well, we're going to put you on crutches. But you can't stop breathing and you can't stop the heart. So what you do is you minimize the external stimuli. And so when you're talking about a student, like in a classroom setting, you think about the cafeteria and everything, like the bells ringing and going through the halls and trying to pay attention and texting and then talking to your friends, and it becomes an overwhelming for the brain. And so the fact is, a lot of kids they won't want to do the cognitive rest. They keep texting, and that's where you kind of have to find the fine line also, like with school too, because some teachers don't get it also, and they kind of say, well, this didn't happen in my classroom. So, but luckily, I think that's changing a lot now, and I think more teachers are coming on board and saying, hey, you know what, this might have not happened in my classroom, but I have to support my student and help him, and just like you would for any special needs student.
I feel like things are getting better, and at least now we're not sending youngsters out with concussions and saying just play through it. I feel like that's good, but I still feel like we're learning more about this as we go, and hopefully we'll continue to see progress made over the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, and I think you're right, Steve. I mean, we're still not, we've come a long way. I mean, from you got your bell rung, shake it off, come back inside, no pain, no gain. And I think it's important that the coaches are embracing this culture. You look at the NFL, and I'm glad that they made a lot of changes, but a lot of people forget that it took a lawsuit to make these changes. Like Jim McMahon and company are the ones that got the changes going. And he suffered a lot, a lot of depression, and we've had some of the and just the forgetfulness. He talked about he couldn't remember one day from the next, and this is at the NFL back then. Remember, the quarterbacks, they sometimes I hear they're like, oh, you know what, they protect the quarterback a lot, and I'm kind of glad they do, because unfortunately, like you saw it with the players of the 80s, with the the Jim McMahon era, that where they really did, like, they went after the quarterback pretty hard, you know?
I do hear you. Dr. Sergio Alvarado, El Paso board certified in medicine with an added qualification in sports medicine, as you've been listening to. Now, the Desert Institute of Sports Medicine is getting ready to reopen their doors. In fact, they've expanded their location at 2267 Traywood, Suite G2. You can call and set up an appointment today, 915-256-9751. That's 915-256-9751. Doc, it has been another great, very educational and fast-moving segment with you. We appreciate the time. I want to wish you a great weekend, and we'll look forward to the next time we get to chat with you here next month on Ask a Doctor.
Thank you, guys. You guys have a great one too.
You too.